A little bit of the Fukushima TEPCO history. So I'm speaking from memory. I did have records of these, if that memory's still working, eh? So at one time, I stored everything off on a hard drive and didn't catalog it very well, so it was pretty useless unless you used, some pretty thorough search engines, search tools. So this is memory, and even to a CDC reference I'm going to make. But just a conversation about a day in the life in what would be Western Japan, miles and miles away from the Fukushima TEPCO 4 reactor failure accident, right? It's a big deal. So the news story was about a stadium far away, and for some reason there was a school assemblies in that stadium, and they were out on the field of the stadium, and a large number of the kids out on that stadium floor got nosebleeds and anxiety, blood pressure raised, they got red skin, um, and a list of a few other symptoms. So this was in Japan's paper, this little note about this. And then the speculations flew after that for months about what had caused it. Now, oddly, the science might have been done. Some follow-up might have been done. Again, this is costly questions that you're going to ask, and can you ask them? Do you have the authority or the ability to ask for them? Can you get the funding for them, should you need? So that story about hundreds or thousands of school-aged youth, I think it was, in another prefecture, far, far away, that those symptoms showed up. So my first response after seeing the story wasn't to look for more news stories. I went to anywhere I could on the web, searching as I do, for symptoms of radiation exposure. And you can find it across the web, and it should be some pages or a page of symptoms in bullet points and then pages of descriptions. You can go further and find the tests required for diagnosing these symptoms correctly. But Japan has enacted very strict laws about medical reporting. It's in the guise of patient protection, but I'm pacing my voice to let this sink in a little bit. This is not patient protection, because if you don't understand the cause, then how can you prevent it the next time? How can you avoid it in the future? So things like a simple dosimeter could have helped. But from my reading of the symptoms and the quickness of it, these were alpha particle symptoms, not gamma particle, not gamma energy symptoms, because alpha can give you more delivered energy effectively because of the proximity to your body. But anyway, so that's if you keep chasing, if you keep going and looking at the rest of the steps required in order to find these answers. That's the complexity of nuclear sciences and the cost, because now we have added nuclear chemistry and sciences on top of the cost of the biological sciences we had to do to get there, right? We needed people out there looking and sampling. I mentioned a dosimeter. It, depending on the dosimeter, somebody could have known, I suppose, if they had one on, but those simply aren't. Who wears those things? But people with Mother Earth hats, right? So, very subtle thing. I I didn't knee jerk to it. I responded as I respond, like this. Back how many years? 7 years ago, 8 years ago, that happened at that stadium. So I didn't look if you can go back and find the news. I didn't go check and see if that CDC reference, that professional reference for field professionals, for medical professionals on the symptoms of exposure. It was on the public website. It still should be there at the CDC. But part of this is figuring out how to chase out the rest of the story. And you can't knee jerk to what the media, the social media specifically, pushes out there. So, again, what I saw in news reports was a large number of children affected with common symptoms like nosebleeds. This stuff, not only is it radioactive, so it's burning, it is also chemically active. These are acids and bases. They're alkalines, typically. They burn differently. I've got a dermabrasion from an alkaline burn because your body chemistry responds differently to it. That was a chemical plant thing. So, this is the patience, the subtlety. I should have gone back and looked to see if there's anything else about that one specific thousands. The number was thousands. So again, it's a book. It is multiple books. It's a library, and most of it has already been written. It's hard to understand. The pieces do not fall in your lap. You can't stop with one book. It has to be fairly recent reference in history. Now, in science, 20 years is a recent reference. 40 years needs some research. 40-year-old sciences could have provided measurements that have to be converted into today's standards. And in dosimetry, boy, is it complicated. So, more coffee.